that.
We are live.
Welcome to another episode of Jewcast, not Timcast, like our guest today is affiliated with, but Jewcast. Here with me, as always, Alan Roberts. Filling in for Mark Lobliner is Louis Shanker, and our guest today, the great Josie, the redheaded libertarian. Josie, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
For people that don't know, Josie, the constitutional scholar, Josie, the libertarian. We have a lot of questions for you, Josie. The first one I want to ask you, I got to challenge your American Revolution knowledge now, all right? And this is Jewcast. So do you know of Chaim Solomon, the great Jew?
I don't know who that is. I've never come across him in any of my research. Who is he?
Louis, do you know who Chaim Solomon is?
Only from you, only hearing you mention him in conversations.
So I get told a lot on Twitter, like, hey, you're a Jew. Like, you can't even be an American because you're a Jew. And for people that don't know, Chaim Solomon funded the American Revolution, the great Jew that helped fund the founding of America. So with Josie on the show, only appropriate, I think for the first time on Jewcast, that I mentioned the great Chaim Solomon, who funded the American Revolution.
And George Washington actually wrote a letter to a Jewish, I don't know if it was an organization.
To the Newport congregation of the synagogue. It's the oldest synagogue in the United States. That's still have the letter. You can actually see it. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it was about unifying and how they're welcome. They're welcome here.
We love that. America and Jews, love each other. I don't want to get into the whole Israel thing on this show, but I will say, there's some support for Israel that can go too far. I'm America first. We're America first on this show. But I just like to point out that it is possible as a Jew to love America. We've been here since the founding. And so, we have Josie, the Revolutionary War historian, the constitutional scholar. I just had to start with that. And so, anyway, Josie, what do you think of the whole big fight today? Trump and Elon, they're going at each other. And I know you're a Trump supporter. I know you're an Elon fan. Where are you going in this whole great divide, or do you hope to mend it?
I hope that they mend it because I think that together they're more powerful than they are separate. I think that Trump is being handed talking points about Elon that aren't true. Like, for instance, he said Elon's mad that he's losing the EV credit, but that's not true. Thomas Massey shared today on the record. Elon was like, I want that credit gone. I think all credits should be gone because, they're wasteful spending. And a lot of times it's corporate welfare. So I think that the people voted to codify the Doge cuts whenever those came about. We wanted to cut the wasteful spending. We wanted to close the deficit. We wanted to start paying down the debt, fix the debt, do something in that regard, but just stop spending the money. And Elon's been very consistent on that. And that's what the people want. Donald Trump's doing a lot of great things. This is more Congress handling the big, beautiful bill because they control the purse, but he's not really pushing back against that. And he likes it and it's part of him. So somebody's fed a little bit into his ego about that. You can kind of tell by how he's attacking Elon on that. So I hope that they mend it. I hope that it's not going to hurt America moving forward. I hope that they're not going to, I just think they're better together. I enjoyed their bromance and I'd like to see that revised.
I'm sure that as a libertarian, you'd like America to spend less. You'd like to see as much spending and pork go away as possible. So would I. But on the whole, from a libertarian perspective, how do you judge the second Trump administration so far?
They're great on being anti-war, trying to do peace deals like he was great at in the first term. He was serious about Doge and cutting the wasteful spending. He's very America first. He's planning a big celebration for the 4th of July, which I love, So I think I wasn't expecting this administration to be perfect. He did free Ross, which was a big platform for the libertarians. I was at the Libertarian National Convention that he came to, and he made us a bunch of promises, and he's been good on those promises. The only thing that's lacking is spending. that's important. He's borrowing against the future of our children. He's not, but Congress is. So I rate them pretty high. I'd give them probably a B+ for sure.
What do you think can be done to cut the pork? I've seen this a couple of ways. One is that all of these Congress people are beholden to special interests. So you try and cut any pork, and one guy in Congress is jumping up shouting, "Hey, I need that pork. Those guys are funding me." And then the other thing I saw, Zero Hedge did a great analysis that said, if we cut all this pork, you're basically cutting the American economy down at the knees, because this is where the money is getting injected that greases all the skids and keeps the economy going. So we're in a terrible cycle right now. Do you have any?
I'd argue against that, actually.
Go ahead, Alan.
The injection of funds, like, while it's important that, like, I understand what you're saying, like, with welfare programs, those sorts of things, that actually puts money back into the economy from taxpayers. It's socialism. But the other stuff of, even just healthcare. Like, I'm a big, like, America only type person, and very frankly, the government should not be involved in our healthcare. The government shouldn't be involved in our gun rights. The government shouldn't be the government shouldn't be involved in any of this stuff. And that's where it should come from. We do not need the CDC, the NIH, the USDA, the CMS. We don't need the NIH. We don't need all of these people. The NIH is literally just a corporate welfare program. Like, basically the grants that they give out of the NIH go to pharmaceutical companies, so pharmaceutical companies can then do their research for free and then charge us. Like, that is corporate welfare. I think that's where we need to look. But killing the economy, I'm a big believer in, like, okay, maybe we should then. Because the opposite side of that coin is our government is running in a capacity that, and Josie, I'm very glad you're here. The government was never supposed to be anywhere close to this size or have this type of power over the American people. The federal government technically should have almost no power over the actual American people. They should protect our borders, protect our rights from the states, and provide common defense. That was the three main things that the government was based upon. So we should start with those three, make sure we have perfect border control, 100% deportation of illegals, zero immigration, and then have our military, which we could use to line the borders anyway, and then they should be making sure the states don't infringe upon our rights. To think that the government should be telling you, like, that you can't collect rainwater is just so far beyond the pale of what the founding fathers started. It's wild. What were you going to say, Josie? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's all right. I was going to say that's Article 4, Section 4 that you were quoting. But one of the things in this bill is bug powder for Madagascar to feed them, like nutrient-enriched bug powder. So if our country is propped up on needing to sell Madagascar or give Madagascar nutrient-dense bug powder, then maybe it is time to look at other routes. So the check to power for when Congress behaves like this. So this is essentially corporatism and cronyism. And this actually,
yes,
tale as old as time. This is why we had the Boston Tea Party. People think it's because of a 2% tax on tea, which is not quite true. It was corporatism and cronyism. So essentially the East India Company was in bed with George. They weren't having to pay any taxes on anything. They were getting all of their lost product refunded totally. And he was actually going to the states or the colonies and saying, you're going to pay their taxes. And so they were able to undercut the smugglers, John Hancock, Sam Adams, when it came to trade, because of they were able to make their products so cheap. So that's why there were boycotts. That's why the Boston Tea Party ultimately happened. So if we're relying on that sort of thing, it's time for a second revolution, essentially. So the way that we have a check of power in the Constitution is in Article 5, Convention of States. Now, this can go either way, okay? So what could essentially happen in an Article 5 Convention of States? You get the representatives from different states to go and have this meeting and figure out what they want to add to the Constitution, take out of the Constitution, adjust from the Constitution, rewrite in the Constitution. You can see how that could go very, very badly if the wrong people are in power.
Right.
If the right people are in power, can be like, okay, let's write the Second Amendment. Like a 4-year-old could interpret it. that's one way to better our nation. Another thing would be if there's more than a 3% deficit next to the GDP, then these people can't go up for election, which is the amendment that Mike Lee is issuing. He's writing a bill to do that, and Elon has endorsed it. So will that bill that would limit the power of Congress ever pass? Absolutely not. But what's good about that is the transparency, so we can see, okay, who's voting against that? Who's holding that bill up? These are the enemies. These are the people we have to primary. So I think we're about 11 states short of being able to have a convention of states. Right now, most of those states are red and good, but the people, you could have a state that's like Texas, for instance, right? State of Texas. Somehow everybody in Austin is going to get the power to make the decisions for Texas. That's just the way that everything works. The blue states, or the people who are blue, will find a way to be in power. If you're in a little red community and there's 10 Democrats in it, those 10 Democrats are going to be in power. So this would be a very risky situation, but it's the only way to get past things that are very important, that are going to fix our country and take the power back.
Very interesting. Louis Shanker, I'm curious, what questions do you have for Josie? Do you have any comment on what she was just talking about, the convention of states?
Well, it's an interesting idea. I mean, first, Josie, we have to admit that if they don't eat the bugs in Madagascar, then we're going to be forced to eat them at home, and we don't want to have to deal with that. So these are the sacrifices we make for freedom. But when it comes to a convention of states idea, I wonder, Josie, do you think that is, I don't want to use the word realistic, but I guess feasible? Do you think that there's a possible situation where we as a country can undergo radical systemic change through a convention of states in a peaceful manner and have a result that we appreciate?
I think that Congress does not want that. So what we would get is hard negotiations from them, saying, okay, what can we compromise on that these people want? What can we give them so that they don't do this? They'll have fear around it to scare the people, being like, you can't do this. You know how dangerous this could be? Like, they could just abolish the Constitution, so there'll be fear tactics. This is something that they don't want. Could it happen peacefully? It could. I think a lot of what would lead up to it would be a lot of fear, a lot of violence, a lot of it would unfold fine, but leading up to it would be terrifying.
It would seem to me, Josie, that if my goal was to push for a convention of states, then perhaps what I would do in a negotiating tactic would publicly advocate for a dissolution of the Constitution itself, and then present the Convention of States as the peaceful and reasonable alternative.
Problem, reaction, solution.
I wouldn't dissolve the Constitution. That's
ever.
No, I wouldn't either, but maybe that's the only way to scare them into it.
Say something like that. The Democrats hate the Constitution. They want to abolish it, but as soon as you say something like that, they become like Sam Adams. They become John Hancock.
I think what Lewis is doing is what Trump did early on, especially. He would propose, we're going to have a total Muslim ban, and then when he gets in office, like, no, we're going to have a ban on a few countries where we can't even vet that their passports are real.
I see. So it's kind of like a bait and switch.
Yeah. The classic model is called problem, reaction, solution.
Like if your child wants a brother, but you say, I don't want to have another baby, so like, okay, a puppy's fine. So
right.
Yeah, but
well, it's like if you want to buy a boat, and the guy is asking for $10,000, you're gonna go in, you're gonna tell him that this, that, and the other thing are wrong. You're gonna offer him $3,500, and you're gonna settle for $5 or $7 maybe. It's the same thing with this. If we want to have a convention of states, these people. Otherwise, it seems like a brilliant and fun thought exercise, but it's largely disconnected from political.
Another thing that they could try to do is insert their own people into it. So deep staters who will come off as rhino, like rhinos, for instance. They'll get them. They'll get them in there. So we'll have the Mitt Romneys, and then the people who will steer it in the way that they want to see it. So that it's completely uncharted waters at this point. And that's sadly, it's a risk that we would have to take to actually fix the damage. The other thing that could happen is Elon just pays money to primary everybody and we get good people in there.
I would love to see Elon primary everybody, and I think that is the appropriate way to go. The thing he was saying today, talking about maybe I'll make a third political party, that was something that I looked at and I was like, Elon, buddy, Ross Perot tried that in 92. All you do is cut the right wing in half and throw the election to the Democrats. The primary is the proper way to address any type of grievances with the GOP. His talk about a third party, like, no, you can't do it. Won't work. You game theory it out. You're only helping.
This is the thing. Libertarians, for instance, the big L libertarians. I'm a small L libertarian. Big L libertarians within the party, they think Elon should have helped them, and that if Elon had helped them, then they would have won. And that's just not the case. Like you said, Ross.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. And after Ross Perot did it, they went in and changed the rules so that any third party now needs 15% in the polling, and at least 5 polls, they need 15%. And I think Gary Johnson got up to 10% in one poll once. So it's not likely that could happen. And then, like you said, if it does, it's going to split the vote one way. So what would need to happen is there need to be, if he decided, I want to back the Libertarian Party, okay, we're going to turn the Libertarian Party into something, then they would need to equal that out with the Green Party, because they can't just split the Republicans, because most libertarians are small L libertarians. They do lean more to the right because the Overton window has been pushed by the left and pushed the centrists out toward the right. So what would need to happen is they'd have to split the Democrats too, and that'd mean the Green Party. That's the established party. So essentially socialists and Kennedy Democrats. Honestly, Kennedy Democrats are Republicans now, but like people who think that they're one of the good ones, and then the socialists. That's the
thing. Anybody that's with Elon at this point, they switched over. They're on the right wing. So if he's taking support from this, okay, you're fracturing a coalition and you're basically throwing support to the far left. So I hope that to you that he figures that out. And the last thing I want to say on that is, when we're trying to figure out how to fix the situation, convention of states, primarying people, all boils down to, like, if you try and build a better mousetrap, fix the system, no system can thrive unless the people are educated. And I think that's the greatest thing. Like, if Elon really wants to make a huge difference in society, he needs to be funding podcasters, people that get the attention of the people, and have them focus on things that will improve America. And I think a lot of people don't understand. That's how you fix the situation, is you get the minds of the grassroots and you point it in the right direction. The left has understood that for a long time with Hollywood propaganda, but the right still doesn't really figure all that stuff out correctly.
So here's a couple issues leading up to that. First of all, there's also another option called a national divorce, and that's kind of like a cold civil war of how we view it. And I think we're closer to that more than people realize, because violence is just around the corner when it comes. We're on Jewcast. Jewish people are going to start getting. It's going to be. I'm viewing the ramp up of both rhetoric and violence amongst the left that's been going on for the last couple of years, that their leaders are literally like propagating. They're saying, go out and get in their face type stuff. And that's only going to last for so long. Like right now, I live in the deep, dirty South. My life is so completely foreign to like my clients that I have in Seattle for weight loss. Like they live in like a completely different country than I live in. I'm totally convinced, right? So at some point in time, like, we're going to have to realize that there are some people that want to live this way in this country, right? That are willing to like stoop to violence. Like, look at the Summer of Love in 2020. Like, they're willing to burn their shit down, right? We need to be realistic about like where we're at. First of all, the federal government is corrupt beyond fixing. It's corrupt beyond fixing. And I say this fairly often, but we openly have a system that propagated the basically medical fraud of COVID, of paying extra for diagnosis so they could pad the numbers. And our government facilitated that. Our government facilitated that in March of 2020. when you look all the way back at what our government's been doing for the last several decades, they have facilitated the poor health and dependence of the American people. So it's not salvageable. I mean, me and Mark used to go back and forth about this, but I just don't see it as salvageable. As it is, look at the trouble Trump's having with the people in Congress, right? Like, I think he has a few bad people like giving him advice right now because this bill is insane. It's just wild to me that we are still like not $1 besides functioning towards American people should be used, but I just don't know how this is sitting with anybody to the fact that like we're having trouble deporting people from our own country. Like America's fucking broken, right? And like, oh, by the way, Joseph, I did want to ask you, which type of libertarian are you? Are you an open border libertarian or a closed border libertarian?
Oh God, closed borders. Closed borders are an extension of property rights. Property rights are the foundation of our Constitution. So closed borders are actually Marxist, or open borders. Sorry, open borders are actually a Marxist thing.
I hope that you tell that to our good friend Martha Bueno. She's a little confused about that.
Yeah, she's tried to start with me on that before, I think. But no, it's open borders are communist. Marx said himself that they want no nations. Okay, that's one of the Marxist tenets is no nations, and without a nation, like without borders, you don't have a nation. So open borders are communist. Closed borders are an extension of property rights. So this is our country.
Now,
to Alan's point, what he was describing, a lot of people call it like a late stage republic. Do you view America as a late stage republic, or do you see America as a shining light that will last another hundreds of years as a leader in the world? Like, where do you see the future of America, Josie?
Statistically, republics last about 245 years. So we're right on the brink. However, when that happens, they either collapse or they have a renaissance. And I think we would have collapsed with Kamala Harris.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I think that we're experiencing more of a renaissance with Donald Trump. Like you see a renewed patriotism. Like they had Paul Revere enactment ride through Massachusetts. That, I mean, could you have seen that happening 10 years ago? Absolutely not. Everything that you were saying earlier, I can dive into that from a constitutional standpoint about a national divorce. So the Reconstruction Amendments, 13, 14, and 15, those were all meant to be retroactive. They're like, all right, we need to repair the damage that's been done and we need to start over, essentially. So they said, all right, all the slaves are freed, where they can all vote. Where anybody who was a commander in the Civil War, we can't have you in power now because you're too dangerous, right? However, this was interpreted moving forward that these were forward motion amendments. That was the danger of putting them into the Constitution, or putting them into the amendments, essentially, is that they would be carried forward instead of used retroactively. So for instance, it's Jefferson Davis had all of his charges dropped. No judge would rule on that. However, he wasn't allowed to do anything formally. He couldn't go be president of the United States ever or anything like that. See how that worked, because our country was built on insurrection, and that's what Jefferson Davis was doing. So essentially telling him, you're wrong to do this. No judge would weigh on it. No judge worth his weight would weigh on it. So then we have January 6th happen, and we see an exploitation of the 14th Amendment. We see them all of a sudden use sedition and an insurrection and throw people in jail for 20-year sentences for parading and planning and not even being there, and just we see it weaponized, right?
Right.
So now we have birthright citizenship is one of the things that's been weaponized from the 14th Amendment.
Yes.
And this is why Donald Trump said no more of this, and it's going to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court needs to rule on that. And when they do, they're going, and we have an originalist Supreme Court. Primarily, obviously, we have the three communists on there, but we primarily have originalist Supreme Court. And when they do, they're going to look at who wrote the amendments, what they said about the amendments, the newspaper article written when they were interviewed about the amendments, and they're going to see that they literally say, this is not meant to move forward. This is meant to fix slavery. Like that would be dumb to move this
Yeah.
forward. And they're going to have to so that'll go one of two ways. They're either going to say, okay, well, it's been standard practice for long enough where this is the way it has to be now moving forward, or they're going to say, no, we have to just repeal this. This can't be anymore. And maybe they'll naturalize everybody that made it through, but then cut it at that point. But if they do it the correct way, birthright citizenship is going to be abolished in our country because it's not constitutional at all. So when it comes to a national divorce as it stands in this country, the 14th Amendment, as it's interpreted right now, it would never permit a national divorce to happen. It would never permit that. And that would also mean a lot of people lose their power, and they would do exactly what they did during January 6th. And it would be Republicans and Democrats this time persecuting people who would dare to do such a thing. So having the 14th Amendment reinterpreted is important for our country when it comes to a national divorce, when it comes to birthright citizenship, when it comes to everything. It's going to all come back to the 14th Amendment. It clouded things up, and I think that we need clarity as a country.
I asked Josie on a space one time.
Thank you very much, Josie.
You're welcome.
What amendment she thinks was the worst? And correct me if I'm wrong, but was it that you said the 19th Amendment was the worst amendment we've ever had?
It's terrible. Yes.
Can you explain for people why the 19th Amendment has been such a disaster?
Well, we had the biggest expansion of power in the fastest amount of time in the history of the world of just having bad things happen as soon as women were given the right to vote. Now, women tend to vote with their hearts, and men tend to vote with their brains. So what had happened essentially is they were Woodrow Wilson, right? Everybody loves him. He's the one who at first didn't want this, but then he realized he could exploit women and, have it work in his favor to have them voting. And so they started selling things to women and pitching things to women in a way that they could get agendas passed because they were exploiting the empathy of women. And we can't have a country run on empathy. It has to be run on logic. Now, going back, this doesn't entirely mean that women as a whole can't vote. Okay. I believe in property rights. So I believe that property owners should be voting. Women.
So you're saying that her husband should vote for her?
No, not exactly. I'm saying that the 19th Amendment says you can't discriminate based on sex. Okay. It's saying you can't do that. It's telling the states they can't do that. And voting was a states issue. Voting was never a federal issue. That's why it's not in the Bill of Rights. So what that means is that we had states and territories, Colorado, Wyoming, 2 territories. We had them have women voting because that reflected their values, and they used the 9th Amendment to do that. So we didn't need that to happen. We could have states that are like, you know what? We could have a state that could be like, only women can vote in our state. That's how we feel. That's what we feel will be the best for our state. We could have other states say, okay, only gun owners, only property owners, only people who've served in the service, because voting is a state's right, and how they want to run their elections is a state's right to do that. So the 19th Amendment really skewed that, and it took that right away from the states and clouded everything up and made our country very vulnerable, very poor, and made the people very powerless. So it all comes back to that.
For as much crap as the boomers take, and I'm not trying to defend them right now, but the generation, when you named it, Woodrow Wilson, I think the worst president of all time, that generation gave us the 19th Amendment, the Federal Reserve, the IRS, World War I, has to be the generation that took America from this trajectory to are we going to be a late stage republic, and now we need a golden age under Trump just for a chance to survive? So those people don't get nearly enough smoke. And I always call them the Gatsby generation. Drunk on success, reveling in, oh, America's so great, just out partying and drinking and letting everything go like this. So
good
those
men.
Are the people we should unite and hate, and they're not even alive, so it's victimless crime.
Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times. Hard crimes create strong men. So the boomers were the weak men.
It's true.
Mm-hmm. And they came out of, the good times because they won the war, and then they were all just living their best lives. They were under Lyndon B. Johnson, who was just here, have whatever you want. We still had a gold standard. Everything was great. You could buy a house for $30,000, just live in the best time. But in that time, they were making horrific rules that later affected and sent us into the hard times. So right now we're in the strong men. I feel like the hard times have created the strong men, and that's what we're in now. So hopefully these strong men will create good times for our children, but our children won't take that for granted.
There's a book that discusses this whole cycle in American history called Generations. I don't know if you've read it, Josie, but phenomenal book that discusses there's basically 4 types of generations in America. There's the idealists, that's basically the boomers. And they always come along. They have, oh, we're going to have Woodstock. We're going to have these ideas that change everything. They create a crisis. All right, the generation under them, the Gen Xers, these are the reactives. They're like just rebels, like, what the hell are these people above us doing? And then comes the civics. That's the millennials. And as much crap as millennials take, we were handed a big shit sandwich, but the top millennials, we are fixing things. And that's what's happened in American history many, many times. The civics fix what these idealists, what the boomers mess up. And then under us, the adaptives, that would be the Zoomers, they just go along with what the millennials established. So the Zoomers right now, they need guidance. And the top millennials, we will show them the way. We're going to lead this golden age. We're going to pilot this ship that Trump is going to hand us off.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
most millennials aren't going to live past like 55, though. Right?
What?
Right. Most millennials aren't going to live. Not the vaccine. Most of you motherfuckers are fat as fuck.
Those aren't the top millennials, though.
Yeah, we're talking about the base millennials, Alan.
The Zennials.
Base people are fat as fuck too. Don't get me wrong. The Trump people are way more for Make America Healthy Again. But there is about 1,000 bare-bellied rednecks that consider themselves snipers or whatever if the American Revolution is going to go off in the red. Like, that's the biggest problem right now. Is like, we can all talk all sorts of bullshit they want, but they got us. Like, we as the people of the United States are sickly. They have functionally made us for the last 40 or 50 years fat, weak, sick, and dependent upon them.
I think a lot of that is what's in the foods, though. The crap they put
emasculated
in the food.
too. Yeah, they're estrogen.
Kennedy is starting to take that crap out of the food, out of the water, even in the air supply. This crap that they drop on us with geoengineering, which even Kennedy has said. He said that's a DARPA thing, and they're going to find this stuff and stop it. So we're just at the beginning of making America.
We are not, and as a former healthcare executive, I can tell you this: you are not going to legislate America healthy again. It's not going to fucking happen.
Well, taking the poison out is a good start. Lewis, I saw you wanted to jump.
They won't take it out.
Yeah,
they're going to label. They're going to label it that way.
The name.
They're going to change the name. They're going to label, they will label it not safe for human consumption. And guess what will happen? Fat people will still be eating that shit because they're addicted to it. They are. We have I want everybody to think about it this way. One of the most addictive substances there is processed sugar.
Oh, sugar.
Processed sugar. Processed sugar is an addictive substance.
Yeah.
If you look at processed sugar this way, right? Okay, so Colombian farmers have chewed on coca leaves as a mild stimulant and even had seen some health benefits because when they chew on it, it's not addictive. It doesn't enter the bloodstream quickly. It's not a refined portion of it, right? But if you grind down coca leaves, grind them down, and form it into a powder, it becomes cocaine. Highly addictive. It enters the bloodstream quickly. It causes a dopamine effect on the brain, hits the addiction centers, and causes the person to want more and more and more of it in many cases, even though it's deleterious to their health, right? Sugar comes from sugarcane. Sugarcane can be used for cooking in a bunch of different ways. But if you refine it down to just glucose and fructose, it enters the bloodstream quickly, hits the dopamine effector on the brain, hits the addiction center of the brain, and the person will eat more and more and more of it no matter what happens to them in often cases. We market this to children. like that is the problem with making America healthy again. We are not going to do it unless we can change our culture. We have people getting paid by the social media entities to gorge themselves on 5,000 calories at a sitting and record it. And they get paid by social media entities. Like, technically, if the government were to step in anywhere and say that, anywhere and do something, it would be like, maybe we shouldn't be showing people gorging themselves on unhealthy food in high capacity. But instead, it is literally rewarded, right? And almost every social media entity, as a fitness person, I can tell you, suppresses fitness content because they want people fat, sick, weak, and dependent. And we will not, like, Kennedy can do whatever. Kennedy can take all the dyes out, great. Kennedy can take all the other stuff out. Great. This might actually help a few people with addiction, and the dyes might help a few people from not developing severe ADHD. Although I think ADHD is a phenotype more than it is like a problem. I think once you learn to master it, it's fucking it's a superpower. But let's be real. We are a gluttonous, lazy ass, fucking excuse making society right now. And that has been propagated for the last like 30, 40, or 50 years of Hollywood, mainstream media, and the government telling you that you deserve to live it up, you deserve to eat whatever you want, and you can fatten yourself as much as we want, and we will just spread the cost of your poor choices to everybody because socialism.
Well, that was very blackpilling. Lewis, do you have any white pills for us?
Yeah, I do actually.
That's not blackpilling, bro. That's not blackpilling. That is reality.
Like maybe a little bit.
That is reality.
I get it. I get it, Alan. I see fat people, and I get my blood pressure through the roof too. I don't like looking at them. I don't like being near them. But anyhow,
I coach them every day. But it's on them. It's personal responsibility, bro.
Yeah, I'm with you. I found it interesting, Andrew, that you and Josie referred to millennials or a current generation as being the strong men. I don't know that I agree with that. I think that perhaps we are still even the Gen Alphas, generations of weak men. I don't think that there's been enough of a growth stimulus for them to develop the internal fortitude to be strong. But what I think is more interesting is discussing what a national resurgence under a golden age of America fostered in by President Trump could look like. When I think of an American revival, when I think of a society or a nation that turns away from the direction we're headed and is able to prosper, the mental image that I come up with is a full American empire. It is the removal of the hypocritical clothing that our nation cloaks itself in pretending that we aren't currently an empire with all of our meddling in the affairs of other nations. I think we should be more open about it. I think in the future, America is either going to be ruled over by the Chinese bugman hegemon, or we will assert dominance openly over other countries. We will extract wealth and resources. We will stop the savagery going on in those nations, and we will propel humanity forward, whether they like it or not.
Wow.
I think millennials went through Y2K, 9/11, this mass racial breakdown that infiltrated our country. They lifted the domestic dissemination part of the Smith-Mundt Act so that propaganda could flow freely into our country again. We had COVID, we had lockdowns.
They or Obama.
Gone through 7 wars, and we did this all before we were 40. So nothing really bothers millennials, which all of this hardship made us stronger, essentially.
Also, the mortgage crisis, the
housing bubble. Yeah, all the stuff that we went through before we were, I mean, I'm not even 40 yet. So all the stuff that we went through.
Yeah, I get that. But when we talk about previous, hard men or strong men from these times, I mean, we're talking about the Great Depression, World War II. We're talking about events where people have real hunger. I mean, I'm not saying that any of these tragedies of the last 4 decades were bad, but I'm saying if you zoom out and you compare them to things at a grander scale in humanity, for instance, these are largely inconsequential. I mean, after 9/11, you didn't have 25% of the population of the country hungry for months at a time.
That's the exact I was going to hit, Lewis. 9/11, after that, we've been in dystopia land for 2 decades. The TSA, the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, soldiers killing themselves, fentanyl, the way Hollywood has gone downhill, and it's this disgusting, dysgenic stuff that we're seeing now. It's a different world.
Absolutely, Andrew. And the only way the dystopian society progressed is by means of pacificity. They were able to placate the population because it didn't feel as onerous as it would if it was done in a naked and aggressive way.
It's modern 4D warfare that millennials.
I agree. I'm just saying it this way, Andrew. For example, if after the housing crisis in 2008, if all of the people on EBT and SNAP benefits had to actually physically line up for a government-run food distribution center, it would be a lot different.
I get it, but
If they had
the
if they
people
had to line up for like a government bread
their,
line, we
their,
would see it differently.
the people
So
getting their EBT and getting on the Zog slop, the chemical stew that Alan was describing. It's been the hard times that we have had to break through, and the people that are leading the way. I'm telling you, the people that have piloted Trump with any type of efficiency, they're not Gen Xers. It's millennials that are behind the scenes getting things done. Go ahead, Josie.
These are the hard times that create the strong men. And the millennials live through our version of the hard times. And we have technology that helped us. We have a lot of welfare. We have a bloated government, so that was able to numb what was actually happening to our country. But the hard times creating strong men doesn't necessarily mean that the hard times the millennials went through and the dystopia that the millennials went through are going to make Gen Alpha stronger. That's not necessarily what that means. It means that, wow, we survived this, so we can become stronger too. Now, it's going to be either, it's not going to be everybody. Every millennial is not a strong man. We know that. Every boomer is not a fun, happy man. There are a lot of hard workers that are boomers too. This is not an absolute, but the hard times created strong men. And those are the millennials. Those are some millennials. Those are some Gen Z. Those are some Gen Alpha. Those are some Gen X that we all went through the same thing. Now it's what we become on the other side of it.
That's correct. I have to run in just a bit, but I know that I think we got you for about an hour, and Alan and Lewis can keep running the show without me. Before I have to run, though, Josie, I have some questions for you about your personal history. I grokked you a little bit. It said that you were doing stuff with We Are Change all the way back in 2007. Can you tell people, I don't know if maybe Grok pulled that out of thin air or if it's true, what were you doing like your early career in the movement? Like, can you tell people about that?
In 2007, I was not involved in politics whatsoever. That didn't.
Grok failed again. Grok failed again.
Yeah, I didn't even. I lived in Massachusetts, and I was just going with the flow. I mean,
what part, if I could ask?
Western Massachusetts. So
I grew up in Springfield area.
I won't dox where I grew up in, but we were neighbors.
Yeah, very nice.
That's not. I was going to say, please don't say where you grew up. So,
no, yeah, I didn't say my town, but
no. Yeah, I can. I'll send that after. You can see where I grew up. But
what are your roots in the movement, though? Like, tell us, because you are so deep into the Libertarian Party, Timcast. There's a lot that you have like real deep roots in. Like, how did this Josie tree grow?
I didn't. I never fit in Massachusetts. I know that's shocking. So I had a friend who was. I didn't fit in until I found Ron Paul, the Revolution. And I didn't get like super invested in it, but I was like, I like this guy. I'm going to follow his work. And then Rand Paul came on the scene like 2013 or so. Or 2012 even. I think it was around then. And I was like, I like him too. And eventually Thomas Massey came around. So I'm finding people that I kind of liked, but I still am feeling kind of isolated in Massachusetts. And so I have a friend who's like, you should try Twitter. Get on Twitter. You know, he's like, you might make a friend or two, you know, because he had similar views to me, and he'd found kind of like a tribe on Twitter. So I was like, okay. So I hopped on Twitter. And at the time, I'm anonymous. I was actually anonymous for my first 6 months on Twitter. And I just started talking, and people started listening. And when I finally put out a picture of myself, I had done some acting and some modeling through Boston Casting. And I finally put a picture of myself up, and my husband gets a message from a stranger saying, there's some dude on Twitter catfishing your wife. They all thought I was a guy. Yep. So, but then I kind of got on there. I began growing, and I became friends with Tim in 2019, and I might have had 40,000 followers at that time. And Tim told me, he's like, you're gonna be big. You're gonna be big. And I'm like, not a chance. He's like, no. He's like, there's something. You're special. You're gonna be big. So it's like, okay, cool. And then right after the Joe Biden was inaugurated, I lost my X account, my Twitter account. It just poof vanished into thin air, and I started rebuilding again. And at that point, I had about 80,000 followers and it just vanished. So I started over. I made an account called Queen Josie and I got up to about 50,000 followers. And then Elon makes the announcement in April of 2022. Yeah, 2022, that he's going to buy Twitter. The next day, my account was restored. All right.
Wow.
And I had just moved down to Florida. I left Massachusetts. I moved to Florida because of COVID and everything. And so within a month of me moving to Florida, I get my Twitter account back. And then Tim reaches out to me and he hires me. He's like, I want you here. So it's like everything, as soon as I moved to Florida, everything just, all the pieces fell into place. You know, I'm finally where I can be myself. I'm finally, I got a job. I didn't have one. I was actually like applying to waitress and stuff. Like I had no idea that I'd ever get hired by Tim. So yeah, it just, and then from there it just blew up. Elon ended up following me. It's just, I just been growing and growing ever since, and just trying to make connections and move forward liberty. And I found out there's a lot of people that don't know a lot about American history, like real American history. So I source document everything. I look at old newspapers, I cross-check them, and I find out things that people might not have otherwise known because we were all taught a very standard version of history. So.
That's an amazing story. Like the quintessential American, like almost rags to riches story. That I don't know if a lot of people have heard that about you. That's an awesome story. Another question I have for you before I get out of here. As a redhead, how do you feel about Hollywood genociding redheads out of films, every redhead character in American media being replaced with a black person? How do you feel about this erasure of the redheads in Hollywood?
Well, didn't you hear all redheads are black now?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you didn't hear that?
No,
A black woman wearing a bonnet, and she's very serious. She's like, she made a video and she was dead serious. And she's like, all redheads are black people, all of them. She's like, if you see a man with red hair, that is a black man. If you see a female with red hair, that is a black woman. Dead serious. And so this.
Are you using that for applications?
Huh?
Like, are you checking black on applications now?
I guess, I mean, I can. I know I can use a hard R with ginger now because it's my word.
Oh, the hard, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The hard R is always disrespectful. I have a shirt that says cracker on it, and I always tell people you can't actually pronounce cracker because that's totally disrespectful.
That's our word.
Exactly.
I'm going to sign off for now. Don't let me ruin the show. And guys, at the end, don't forget to have Josie plug where people can find her. Josie, thank you for being on. I'll see you on the internets.
Bye, Andrew.
All right. Take care, Andrew.
Take care, Andrew. Thank you. So, Josie, I mean, I know you only have a little bit longer time. I wanted to ask you, you know, we've talked for about an hour about like the problems with America, those sorts of things. Like, what call to action to actually make fundamental change would you suggest anybody do? Like left, right, anything like that? Like, do you think getting more people involved would help? And how do you think that they should start getting involved? Like anybody.
You have to get on the what word? School committee. There's the word I'm looking for. All right. Everything is rooted back to education. So you got to get on to your school committee and you got to start making the changes there. We have public school. I don't think that's going to be abolished anytime soon. So that means the majority of people go to public school, or the majority of kids. That's where the change has to start, because they start indoctrinating at a very young age. So you get on the school committee. You can make calls about what the education looks like. You can make calls about what books they read. So that's the first thing. And then obviously a bottom-up approach to change things. So you have to change things at a local level. So become a selectman and get involved with your local town politics, become the mayor, become a sheriff, and then work your way up from there into the state politics, and then get into federal from there. So that's the best thing that I can recommend anybody do.
That's awesome advice. Do you plan on running?
Absolutely not. No, I'm doing my part here. No, it's not for me at all. People are always like, are you going to run for anything? I'm like, no. I'm like, I like to interview. I like to interview these people. I prefer not to be one of those people. I'm not it's not for me. So, but I try to do my part doing what I do as the redheaded libertarian.
And I think you do an amazing job. I was just wondering because everybody always pitches that around. Like people have asked me before, like, are you going to run for for government? I'm like unelectable, right? Like I'm not even really, I'm not a Republican, a Democrat. There's probably video of me saying the word fuck over 1 million times online. You know what I mean? Like, tattoos. I'm not electable. Like when people say that, they're like, you should run for Senate. Like, first of all, you need millions of dollars to do that. Yeah. And that's part of our problem too, if you ask me. Like the barrier to get into politics is ridiculous. It is set up for the incumbent to win, 9 times out of 10, especially because they cheat. But I mean, like they just openly cheat anymore. We're just okay with it. But I think I wanted to like leave this for the both of you. We are coming up on the start of the 2026 election cycle, right? Predictions. Josie first.
Oh, goodness. I think we have to get through this year before I can make a real good prediction because we're so soon into the Trump administration. I kind of like to give it a year before I can really gauge where we're at. I think the Senate is going to stay Republican. Likely the House too. There's a few vulnerable seats, but there's only maybe 2 vulnerable seats in the Senate, which even if they won them would give us still give the edge to MAGA. I think that I just think it's too early to really know who's going to do what. Like if Elon's like who he's going to back in the primaries, I think that's what's going to be a major tell.
And Lewis, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that much like she said, 2026 is too far away. I mean, anything could happen between now and then, from people passing away in positions of power to war to economic catastrophe. So there's really too many variables. I do think that the New York City mayoral election is fascinating. It'll be interesting to see what happens, to see how well this communist guy, Zorhan or something like that, I don't know, a non-American sounding name, to see how well he does in the election. I did have a question for Josie, though. You mentioned that you're a history buff, and I love that. Do you have any favorite stories or tidbits about American history that many people don't know that you'd like to share?
The American Revolution. First of all, the British fired the first shot. There was a letter sent from Sam Adams and John Hancock over to King George with what happened, and it actually says that the British fired the first shot. So, because that's a mystery. We're taught, nobody knows who fired the first shot. The British fired it. Also, the battles of Lexington and Concord, they weren't fought over a tea tax, because that's the other thing. We revolted and had a war because of a tea tax. They were fought over gun confiscation. So what had happened during the Boston Tea Party, right? Following the Boston Tea Party, King George issued what was called the Intolerable Acts, which essentially closed Boston Harbor, and it gave full authority. It pretty much turned it put Governor Gage in charge and then turned him into a king. He got rid of all the judges. We had captured courts. He put all his own people in places of power in Massachusetts. And, Massachusetts was completely captured. So he was facing an upright revolt from the people. And so they were going to confiscate weapons. So the battles of Lexington and Concord were actually fought over stopping the British from taking their weapons. Now, the colonial spies had gotten wind that this was going to happen, so they were able to prepare from it. They were able to hide along Battle Road and shoot them like fish in a barrel as they fled Concord. So that's my favorite story, is that we've been pro-gun since before we were these United States of America, and that's not taught to us in school.
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, it's also not taught to us that every gun law is unconstitutional. Just like you said, like every single infringement. Like I've got this thing, like ammo and firearms shouldn't even be taxed, because you shouldn't be able to tax a right. Like any tax is an infringement.
You can't tax voting. The poll tax is illegal. So because it's a right and it's going to infringe on people's ability to whatever. It's like, so taxing bullets could do that too. It's going to infringe on their right to self-defense.
Exactly. we're very, even though I don't classify myself as libertarian, we're very much in the same mind frame. So.
It's small
Yeah,
L.
I'll say this, Josie. You're the first libertarian that I've come away from a conversation with a good perspective on. So I appreciate that. You're
It's
doing
that
wonders
small
for your
L.
cause.
The big L is kind of scary. They're the open borders and the sex changer kids and all of that stuff. But the small L's are pretty normal. We're just fiscally responsible and just want the country kind of returned to what it was, the vision of our founders. That's a small L libertarian.
And I totally believe in that. I think the reason why I can't ever rock, I don't like rocking with like calling myself any particular political party because I'm an individual, right? But at the same time, it's like I was, Dave Smith might have gotten my vote. I was really hoping that the Libertarian Party would back RFK, would like choose him as the nominee, because I would have voted for.
Yeah, I was at that. Nobody wanted him. It was essentially, so it came down to, oh my goodness. So Clint Russell was running. It was pretty much between him and then that, what the hell is his name?
Oliver.
The gay guy. Yes. Chase Oliver. Came down to the two of them, and essentially an alliance was made between Chase, who was in second, and then the third place guy, Termott. And they made an alliance saying, okay, well, our electors will vote for this if you guys run on the same ticket. So they both had ideas for who they wanted their vice president to be. And they ditched their vice president and they made Chase the lead on the ticket and Termott his vice. So, and that ended up getting the upper hand over the who was actually supposed to win the ticket, which was, oh my gosh, I can't remember the lead on the ticket. Holy cow. It was the guy.
Dave.
And no, it wasn't Dave.
Smith? No.
No, what the heck is his name? Oh my gosh, no, he was a former like communist, and then he turned libertarian. Yeah, so he was supposed to be like the lead on. He was supposed to get it. Like, I mean, because he was backed by Dave Smith. Dave Smith said this is the guy, and I interviewed him, and he was really great. I can't believe I forgot his name. It's been so long. It's been a year.
Yeah, it happens. And so much has happened. Like we get news fatigue. I talk about this all the time. Like. And I think this is on purpose. I think both sides do this, by the way. It's like
Rechtenwald. There it is.
Oh, okay. I know who you're talking. Okay,
Yeah.
I can't believe I didn't know that. Damn. But like I think that they keep throwing stuff at us. Like remember in early 2020 when they were like, hey, by the way, you need to wear a mask. Hey, by the way, you need to stay in. Hey, by the way, there's arrows in the grocery store aisles. And oh, by the way, aliens exist. Like they're like. What the fuck, man? They're like, you're throwing so much shit at us all at once. Like, it's to keep you off balance.
Do you follow Tom Woods?
Yes, I do.
Tom Woods every week made like a recording of exactly what happened and like sent it out to his. Yeah, he put it all together in like a book, and it's just everything, a collective of everything. He made it into a book and released it, and it's just every bad thing that happened all there in one place. It's incredible.
Well, it's like you could never even you couldn't question Fauci about masks because he was already on to now you need to wear 2 masks. Like you couldn't question about the vaccine because it's safe and effective, and anything else left is done. I also
Alan, I have a question for the two of you. I've spoken to I'm 26. I've spoken to a lot of my peers, and we have this weird feeling where after 2020, it felt like as soon as the ball dropped on 2020 going into 21, time froze in the height of COVID. And it wasn't until November 5th of this past year that it seemed like things started moving forward again. It's the weirdest feeling on earth, and it's so hard to describe, but people my age that I talk to, we feel like time froze in 2020.
You're right. When I think about my children, my daughters, they're 16, almost 15 and 10. And when I imagine them, I picture them in 2019. Like I don't picture them as they are now. They're like forever that age in my head. And I felt what you felt, like the wake up when Trump got shot. All of a sudden, everybody woke up, everything started moving again. So it's almost like we had a timeline jump.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the timeline thing is an interesting theory because it's an actual worthy theory. I didn't feel the same way you guys felt. In 2020, I was a healthcare executive. I've helped write outbreak policies for entire counties in the United States, right? And while I'm not a doctor, I'm extremely well read, and I was an administrator, right? And so I immediately was like COVID's bullshit. Like immediately, it's an upper respiratory virus. If you are young and healthy, it is going to be of almost no significance to you at all. And like, I knew we were in trouble. I knew that they were quote unquote going for it. Even with Trump in office, the powers that be went for it. They immediately had everything. Like, if the coordination that people ignore happened at the beginning, it was they immediately got rid of, in 2020, they got rid of so many people's Twitter accounts that if you spoke out at all, they got rid of you. And a lot of people don't realize this, but there is a doctor, his name's Dr. John Ioannidis, and he is the most cited scientist for public health in the world. He was considered up until 2020 to be the foremost mentioned expert for public health, right? And he's been cited thousands of times. He's an amazing, goofy looking guy, but amazing scientist, right? And you weren't allowed to share his words in early March. Like, in early March, he was saying, like, hey, we need to calm down because fear is the worst thing we can do, but also we don't want to incite panic because panic then gets people to do unhealthy behaviors anyway, right? And he was like, once you factor in all the asymptomatic spread, like the seroprevalency, like the antibodies, once you factor in all these people, it's going to be likely a factor of about 10 to 20 of how less deadly it is. And it was about a factor of 20, meaning like they thought it was 3.24 and it actually turned out to be 0.23, as a global, thing about it. And he published a seroprevalence study on the World Health Organization that states that the under 70 IFR is 0.05, and for everybody it's 0.23 adjusted, right? So it's the flu or less than the flu for people under 70. And I was just like, what are we doing? Like, why are we even talking about a vaccine? Like, we should be trying to get everybody healthy. Our public health officials should be mentioning that, hey, by the way, if you're fat, this is going to be bad for you. If you're not, this is going to be nothing for you. Like, not mentioned once. Instead, they started talking about masks. And I was like, well, at least there's going to be a PSA on how to properly don and doff a mask, right? Because I used to teach that class when I was in healthcare, because like, it actually increases your risk of infection when you don't do it correctly, right? Nothing. So I was very open about it, and I had never really spoken about politics or public health like that on my forum, and I was doing very well on YouTube. I had well over 275,000 subscribers, and I was gaining like 2,000 a week. I was going to hit 1 million if they kept going, right? But I spoke out, and all of a sudden they killed the channel, but I also received thousands of death threats between 2020, and so the time didn't necessarily stand still for me.
That makes sense. They also had the biggest wealth transfer in the history of the world. They silenced the opposition. They were pushing the 2030 agenda the entire time.
Oh my God, the entire time.
They got delayed with Trump for those 4 years, and then they were able to speed things up for their agenda in the 4 years that they installed Biden as president. They were able to move forward things. That's why they started, like, one of the things that they needed to be on track for the 2030 agenda was a global food shortage in 2025. So we needed a global food shortage. So that's why they were killing the cows and culling the chickens. And we had 100 million chickens culled, so that means this was cheap food. This is chicken and eggs. This is very cheap food. And they're all of a sudden like, nope, there's a bird flu and there's no way to treat it. And if one bird has it, we just have to slaughter your flock.
Which is asinine. No, it's asinine, because that's like, okay, well, if one person has COVID, we need to kill everybody.
And how are they even catching it? How are these birds catching it? The only people who had the testing for it were the government going farm to farm saying, oh, you've all tested positive for it. But how they weren't exposed to any. They were isolating. They were self-isolating. These chickens were self-isolating, and they were still catching
it. Yes, they were. Exactly. Imagine that. Yeah. It's so funny. But remember all the food plants being burnt down too in 2020?
Oh God, yeah.
Like,
then they're like, oh, this happens all the time. It's like, no, it doesn't.
And I'm like, people, they're going for it. Like the globalists are going for it. We just don't, you don't want to admit it. Like, nobody wanted to admit it because they were so terrified of COVID, because everybody's so fat that everybody was worried about getting a cold and dying, right?
Yep.
But they went for it. Like, they had the mask signs ready. Like, every grocery store ended up very quickly with arrows pointing up and down aisles. Like, the production of that, everything like that. Like, I remember my wife and I in like May 17th of 2020 or 19th of 2020, we had just gotten back off a cruise. We were like the last cruise ship let back in. And we get home, we turn on the Roku TV, and there's already a little safer at home together thing on there. Like, this is coordinated. You know, like they're obviously deciding what scientists you can listen to, what what is approved, what's inapproved speech. Like they immediately started censoring people, and in my mind, I'm like, so this is America falling. Like to allow that to happen, and I still will argue that until we put people in jail at the least, because many of these people deserve way more than jail. I'm just not going to say it because we are on YouTube. Until we start doing that, they'll do it again. Like they will find a way to do it again on different levels. They're talking about COVID right now as if it's not a fucking cold. You know?
What's
like,
good is that so many people woke up after this. We were never supposed to wake up. We were never supposed to get power back again. It was all, we were supposed to be a fall into COVID. Hillary Clinton was supposed to be in office when this happened. And then I mean, she would have picked the justices. We would have 6 Sotomayors on the Supreme Court. You know, it was never ever supposed to happen that we were going to be freed from this. So that's something that kind of gives me faith in that good beats evil.
Well, I guess that's one of the reasons why things feel so optimistic these days, Josie, is I remember the moment when they announced on November 7th of 2020 that they had stolen the election. No, they had fortified, YouTube. They had protected the integrity of the 2020 election and given it to Biden. The level of despair that I felt and so many others felt when it was like, we're finally becoming adults. President Trump is here. We're moving in a good direction. We've got this crazy COVID thing going. Then Biden comes in. Then it's a winter of illness and death. And it was so far. I mean, people forget they were talking about making internal passports in the United States to go in between states under the guise of COVID. The alarm bells should still be ringing.
That's a violation of the 14th Amendment as well. You can freely go between states. You have the freedom of movement between that. But they also had the show trials. You know, they're like, here's what's happening. We're going to put on your TV so you can watch every day. So they have the death ticker on one end. They have the show trials up on the TV, you know. So yeah, it was a very dystopian period of time that we were never supposed to come out of, but we did. So now I hope enough people are awake where if they start seeing the signs again, if anybody ever says, oh, just 15 days, they're like, hell no. And I think, you know, states like Florida will, as long as we have somebody like DeSantis still in charge, we'll be fine. They'll still be free states, which is good.
Yeah. Well, I completely agree about that. Like where the state you live in is very, very, very important nowadays, like extremely important when it comes to your rights and everything, right? And I think leftists think the same way because like they want to, you know, have abortion and we want to have guns. You know, so it's like, I mean, it's important. And again, it's why we're becoming more dichotomous as it is. Like there's not middle ground between a lot of people. I mean, Tim does that show,
Culture War.
The Culture War, yeah. They've tried to get me on that show multiple times, and they can't get anybody to debate me. So,
that's a big problem. It's hard to find people on the left that will debate.
Well, yeah, no, people don't debate me on health, weight loss, and COVID. They just don't. I mean,
I think there's some rising star in the Democrat Party. They call her Olivia Juliana. I think it would be a perfect debate opponent for you.
Oh yeah.
No. It depends on what you mean by debate. Like, I mean, I've seen.
I mean, I've heard that she is a tremendous intellectual heavyweight.
Tremendous and heavyweight.
I like the heavyweight portion. That was very good. Like that was a nice double entendre there. Yeah, but the thing is, like, we're at the stage now where people aren't even talking. Like, I truly mean this. Like, I only use statistics to talk about health, public health, obesity, COVID, all of it, from the statistics that are put out by our government, which are normally inflated to suit one way or the other, but I still use them. And you can use them to show that we're very sickly, but some stuff wasn't as deadly as, like, COVID was not deadly, but we're very sickly people. Like, we should be way more worried about way more worried about the obesity epidemic than COVID. We should be way more worried about the actual healthcare system. The healthcare system has its own incident fatality rate. Like, if you look at, for a young, healthy person, like Josie, you stay in shape, everything like that, your risk from COVID is probably like 0.0003 or something like that. It's probably super infinitesimal small. Like, you'd be like 1 out of every like 40,000, maybe 100,000 people of your age bracket that would pass away because you're
Yeah,
in good health. You're not
I have a type of anemia, so when I got it the first time, it was hard for me because of I had a condition. I had a pre-existing condition. But when everybody else I know that was my age got it, they were fine. It was like it was a cold, it was the flu. It was very quick. When my kids got it, I mean, my youngest got it, and she had 24 hours of the sniffles, and then she was perfect.
Yeah.
So it was very dangerous.
Super dangerous, right?
Yeah, but very dangerous.
Yeah. If you look at the healthcare industry, I mean, the incident fatality rate of medical error, like there's about 1 billion medical interactions in a year in America between American people and the healthcare industry, right? And 371,000 people die a year of medical error. So that's an incident fatality rate of 0.0371. So you are in more danger going to the doctor than you are of COVID. And people just don't want to look at these numbers that way. It's like they want to live in fear because everything's propaganda. Just like you were talking about the Munce Act, that Obama made it so that the media could lie. Like that's basic terms for people to understand it.
The first test of that was the Black Lives Matter, the boy with the Skittles.
Yes.
Yeah, Trayvon and George Zimmerman.
The first time I turned on the news and I'm watching and I'm hearing propaganda, and I'll never forget it. I turned it on. I'm like, this is propaganda.
This is fake news.
This is wow. Like I've never heard anything so partisan in my life. Oh, this is like bias. Wow. Yeah. And I was like, this has to be a mistake. This has to be temporary. This has to be just, I don't know. I've never heard that. I'd never heard it like that before. Right. And then it never stopped. So
and it's funny how that filters down, because I remember Trayvon Martin. I was in 7th grade, and our 7th grade Spanish teacher made us all write letters.
I feel like I just aged.
We all had to write letters to his mother.
Well, you can be quiet too. I'm the old man in the room. I'm going to be 54 here in a minute. So like,
you all had to write letters to his mom.
Yeah, to Trayvon's mom, talking about how evil America was.
Oh my God! See, there you go. Yeah, propaganda.
That's fucked up. That's propaganda. That really is.
Yeah, that's what it is. Wild. That's what it comes down to, and that's once they start putting it onto the youth. So.
Yep. So Josie, thank you very much for joining us. I didn't want to hold you too long. You gave us an hour, and you've been very gracious about going over. Where can everybody find you, support you, everything like that? Not that like anybody's going to be here that doesn't know who you are, but where can they find you, support you, and what can they do for you?
You can find me on X at TRHL Official. I'm the redheaded libertarian, and I also do outside media work for Timcast Media. So you can go to timcast.com, support our work there. And I do a show once a week called Spaces with Josie. It's usually on Monday nights or Sunday nights. We've been a little thrown off lately because I had a wedding in Massachusetts I had to get back to. So I just had the boys from Tower Gang on, a Nephilim Death Squad, and their show. Yep, they're doing.
I know who they are.
Yes, they're a little edgy. They're doing a offensive comedy show called Bohemian Grove. So they pitched that a little bit, and I have Sardonic Pod on with me on Sunday. So you can catch that live right on X. I stream it live on X, and it also streams a video on Rumble.
What time is that on Sunday?
Sunday is going to be 3 p.m. I'm working with his time zone. Usually I'm on Monday nights at 7. So It's a little messed up, but we're going to get back into the swing of things.
That's outstanding. And thank you again. It's been a pleasure. Lewis, thank you very much for filling in for Mark. It's greatly appreciated, sir. Lewis, where can they find you?
Thank you, Josie.
My pleasure.
Lewis, where can they find you?
Well, you can find me on x.com, the everything app, as it's called, at Radical Shanker, SHENKER. Otherwise, thank you. God bless America. Let's stay in this fight. Let's take our country back. And let's be great people to ourselves and our neighbors. Thank you.
That's awesome, man. And again, Josie, thank you very much. Lewis, thank you. And my name's Alan Roberts. I'm here for Jewcast. It's almost mentioned by other podcasts. But I'm here for Jewcast right now. Thank you all very much. It's much appreciated. We'll see you next week. Have a great day.
The Holy Trinity Bundle isn't just about weight loss. It's about empowering you to find your healthiest, happiest self. Let's talk about what's in the bundle and how it caters specifically to our needs. First, we got Ember, which is not just any fat burner. It's also going to boost your mood, your energy levels, while also suppressing your appetite. And if you're worried about it being too strong, you can split the tablet in half to tailor its impact. Next, we have Alchemy NCT, which turns the carbs that you eat into energy and not fat. Yes, energy, not fat. This is our way of making sure that the meals that you eat contribute positively to your weight loss journey. And girls, we all know that we want that. And finally, no morbidity. This one's my favorite because it works while you sleep. It burns fat and controls those nighttime cravings without any stimulants, so you wake up feeling refreshed. Try it out and feel the genuine difference. Here's to new beginnings and real results.